I want to start by confessing something. I cry on first days. I cried on my first day of nursery, cried on my first day of first grade, I cried in fifth grade, and even in 11th grade. And yes, I also cried on my first day of university. And I realized something. First days in my life have always felt like walking through fog. And not the pretty fog you see in movies, but the real one. The dense, disorienting fog where everything looks familiar, but also completely strange. On a foggy morning, you can still see the outline of the world. Buildings, trees, people. But nothing seems clear enough to be safe. You take a step, but the ground feels different. You hear voices, but you can't tell where they're coming from. You're moving forward, but you can't see what's 2 meters ahead of you. And that's exactly what beginning something new feels like. Fog makes you slow down, makes you unsure, makes you hyper-aware, and it forces you to accept that you're no longer in a place you fully understand. Now, here's the important part. That fog I felt my whole life, turns out it's not just me. Science shows that most people experience spikes of anxiety during beginnings, any beginning. Researchers at the University of Michigan showed that transitions activate the same neural circuits as perceived threat. Even when nothing dangerous is happening, your brain treats the first day the way it treats standing on a cliff, alert, confused, and unsure of the environment. Another study showed that 60% of people experience physical symptoms on a first date: faster heartbeat, shallow breathing, and overthinking. And not because something is wrong, but because the brain is adjusting to change. So if you ever felt overwhelmed on your first day of school, a new job, presentation, a date, that fog, it isn't a flaw. It's biology. My first day of university, it wasn't even classes. It was orientations, getting to know each other, understanding the environment, and on the outside, everything went well. But inside, the fog was heavy. When I got home, I sat on my bed and started crying, like ugly crying. And not because something was wrong, but because nothing was clear. I told my mom I thought I had everything figured out, because in school, I knew my map, my friends, my rhythm, my place. And in one single morning, that map disappeared. And that's when the real fear showed up. It wasn't, what if I fail? It was, what if I don't give this a real chance? What if I stay in what feels comfortable? What if I don't open up to the people around me? What if I decide what this place is before I actually experience it? And that's when I understood something. First, they scare us, not because we lost, not because we're not enough, and not because something is wrong with us, but because we don't know how to approach what's new. And in that uncertainty, it's easy to close ourselves off, to hide or forget who we are, at least for a little while. But the more we do that, the more we limit what that experience could become. First, they scare us because they're new, but also because they require something from us: open-mindedness. And here's where things start to get deeper. Yes, we close ourselves off when something's new, but also because we misunderstand what's happening inside us. And to understand this fear, we have to separate 2 words we use as if they mean the same thing: identity and personality. Psychologist Erik Erikson described identity as something stable, long-term, a deep sense of who we are across time, our values, our core beliefs, the stories we tell ourselves about our life. Personality, on the other hand, is how we express ourselves in different contexts. Research in personality psychology showed that while personality traits are stable, behavior, it does shift depending on the environment. We adapt tone, energy, even humor based on social cues. In other words, identity is the root. Personality is how the branches move. And logically, that makes sense. But on a first day, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like if the branches move too much, the root might not be as stable as we thought. And when this happens, uncertainty doesn't just exist in the background. It becomes the way we experience everything. And this led me to understand the 3 specific reasons on why first days trigger us so deeply. Issue number 1, uncertainty. In familiar spaces, we move without thinking. We know how things work. We know how people will respond. But in a new environment, nothing is predictable yet. You don't know what the unspoken rules are, how people will react to you, and whether your normal way of being will fit. And that lack of predictability makes everything feel amplified. Suddenly, you're hyper aware. You're questioning where you're standing, how you're speaking, whether you're saying too much or too little. The more uncertain you feel, the more you start questioning yourself. And not because your identity changed, but because you don't have feedback yet. Uncertainty removes familiarity. And when familiarity disappears, anxiety rises and confidence wavers. When this happens, we don't allow ourselves to be open-minded. Instead, we hold back. We stay in what feels safe. We observe instead of engage. Uncertainty leads me to the second reason on why first dates trigger us so much. That's tainting new experiences by past ones. Or, better said, expectations. We rarely enter new spaces neutrally because we don't just wonder what will happen, we predict it. And the problem isn't the situation itself, it's the gap between what we expected and what actually happens. If I had a bad day before, I might enter the next one already anxious. If I expect everything to be amazing and it's just normal, I might be disappointed. If I expect everything to go wrong and nothing terrible happens, I still carry unnecessary fear. The truth is, expectations don't just prepare us, they pre-establish our emotional response. And that's exactly when uncertainty starts to feel like a threat. The third reason on why first dates matter so much is deeper. And it's the fear that adapting means changing who we are. When you act slightly differently in a new environment, quieter, more cautious, more observant, it can feel like you're becoming someone else, or you're not being entirely yourself. Truth is, we tend to think that authenticity means behaving exactly the same everywhere. So when our behavior shifts, we panic. But the fear, it isn't about the environment. It's about identity. And that's exactly why first dates trigger us so much. Because they don't just test our skills, they test our sense of self. But don't worry, here is where the shift starts. Acting differently doesn't mean our identity disappears. It means our personality is adjusting to a context it doesn't understand yet. New beginnings don't erase who we are, they reveal how identity adapts. And yet, when we enter something new, it might feel like we have to leave our old selves behind. So we understand the space and feel comfortable again. And this idea isn't really new. In Greek mythology, there is a river in the underworld called Lethe, the river of forgetting. And souls would drink from it to erase their memories before starting a new life. In a way, that's how I imagined first date. A little bit dramatic, I know, but as if I had to figure out who I was all over again just to fit in a new environment. But new beginnings are not the river Lethe. They don't demand forgetting, they demand adapting. We usually say first dates are stressful, they're scary, and let's just get that over with. But scratch that. What if first dates are invitations to explore who you are in impromptu situations? Invitations to be more intentional and present? What if they're the quiet moments where transformation truly begins? Remember, we all go through this, and being welcoming and courageous, although hard, it is the key to reaching these moments. Remember how I told you about my first day of university? As months went by, I started seeing what the fog had hid from me on that first day. I met students that became my best friends, teachers who guided me and inspired me. And slowly, this place I feared became my second home, a place where I felt authentic, capable, and real. And rather than losing who I was, I reinforced it. New beginnings matter because they give you the chance to grow. But if new beginnings are not about forgetting who we are, but about learning how our identity adapts, the real question becomes, what do we actually do when we walk into a first day and the fog appears? What I came to understand is that uncertainty, well, that's unconstant. And once I accepted that, I freed myself from the pressure of having to control the outcome. And from that, I understood two small things that helped me. First, open-mindedness is key because it allows us to adapt. One of the biggest sources of anxiety on a first day, it isn't the situation itself. It's the story we tell ourselves about how it should go. Sometimes we walk in expecting everything to be perfect or to go wrong. Both create pressure before anything even happens. So instead of asking, will this be good or bad, try something simpler. Be curious. Be curious for the first 10 minutes. Curious about how the space works and what you might learn. Curiosity removes the pressure to immediately be someone and allows you to understand where you are. in that curiosity, we give ourselves the space to take in the environment, connect with others, and build confidence as we go. This is how we transform a first day from a threat into an opportunity. Second, hold on to the parts of yourself that matter most. When we enter new environments, almost everything can change. Our routines, our friendships, the way we speak, even the way we think. And because so much is changing at once, we try to adjust everything at the same time, hoping that if we adapt fast enough, we'll feel stable again. Remember how I told you that on a first day, it might feel like if the branches move too much, the root might not be as stable as we thought? This is exactly that moment. So ask yourself, what actually matters to me here? Your values, your intentions, the way you treat people, those are your roots. And roots aren't there to stop movement. They're what makes movement possible without losing direction. So the next time you walk into a first day and the fog appears, don't fight it. Don't rush it. Just remember, the fog was never proof that you were lost. It was proof that something new was beginning. And I assure you, on the other side of the fog, there are people who will become your people, places that will become your home, and versions of yourself you haven't had the chance to meet yet. I know this because I cried on my first day of university. And who knows, I might as well cry on my first day of work. But now I know that first days can lead to the best chapters of our lives. Thank you.